Hi, I'm Christan with Edwards Instrument Company. And post-COVID, 2022, we're into 2023 now, and I'm here with Toby. It's fantastic actually to see you. It's been
too long.
And one of the things I've always prided ourselves in at Edwards is being in touch constantly with artists and musicians, and even just our customers, just checking in and seeing where we're at. And this trip was overdue for a couple reasons. We needed to touch base and see where your instrument is, and improve upon a few things. Because the longer you have a relationship with an instrument, you're going to find something.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to just jump into interviews.
I'm Toby. I'm principal trombone of the Boston Symphony Orchestra. I teach at NEC and Boston University. But yeah, this has been overdue for a bit. And if you're an honest artist, then your voice will evolve, always trying to stay present. And as that voice evolves, then what worked 3 years ago might not work as well now. And so it's really great to have your ears that I trust and your expertise in the field of acoustics and mouthpieces and trombones to be able to say, like, I need this color, I need this response, I need this sound. Is there any way that we can tweak things to get closer to what I have in my head, which is, as I said, completely different than it was before.
And you have a luxury. It's called, I believe, it's the Decatry?
In the Boston Symphony, we record every concert.
And so I can get feedback from Toby the day after, I believe, of concert, and you can listen back to your performance. And from that data, you can then understand where we need to adjust. And that helps me do my job too, because it's not just, I was thinking that no, I've been listening and I hear this.
Yeah. I think a lot of times we trombone players might, practicing earnestly and sincerely, come to a place where the sound in our mind is not matching what's coming out the end of the bell, to have you there to be like, I can help you. Let's just talk about what you want to sound like. Yeah. I really appreciate you being here as a resource that's helping me on my artistic journey.
Oh, and it's exhausting too. We worked yesterday, and at the end of the day, I had to step away to pick up my daughter, and you were like, I'm just going to stay here and relax for a little bit. And I took my daughter home. I went and took a nap, and I was so exhausted. And I came back, and you're like, I took a nap, because you're so in tune with your listening that it's exhausting.
Emotionally exhausting.
Yes, but I think it's been really fun to make these small steps with you, and then get feedback from the orchestra and from your peers, from Jim and Steve as well.
Yeah, because I'm not surrounded by shabby people in any way, shape, or form. People that I admire a great deal. Their ears and their feedback means the world to me. When Jim, Steve, or Tom Rolfs, or Mike Roylance, the whole back row as well. We all kind of hold ourselves accountable, and when things aren't working, we hear about it from each other, because at the end of the day, as painful as that might be, I'd much rather hear Tom Rolfs say, look, man, something's not working here, than read it in the review. I don't want to, then that means that I've been making a mistake for a while, and they're hearing it all the way in the Boston Globe. And I might make some bad press. That's not good. So we can catch it much earlier. And when I have that level of trust between you all the way back home, it's wonderful.
And that brings me to another subject I wanted to talk to you about. And it's with a lot of artists in orchestras, but monogamy. If you need a certain color with a certain piece, you're going to play what you need to play. For the Boston Symphony, you'll use a German-style horn, which I've seen you use.
Yep.
You've used a Tyne alto. You've used a Bach trombone at times. Yeah. And you predominantly play your Edwards.
Yeah.
But there are times that every professional, if they're being honest with themselves, should choose the best equipment for the piece, and to respect the music enough that, can you continue with this?
Okay, so I have really strong feelings about this, and I'm glad, I appreciate, and I feel comfortable talking about this, because when we're talking about accountability to the music, there would be a less monogamous relationship with your equipment. And that would be to say, at some point you have to say, like, where are your priorities? If your priorities are on being comfortable just playing the same thing all the time, then you might end up playing the wrong instrument for that piece. For example, if you have a jazz piece to play and you're on a large bore tenor made to play Bruckner, you have to concede that you would achieve the color of forte much later in volume than the composer would require. So if you're playing Tommy Dorsey, for example, I'm Getting Sentimental Over You, one of my favorites, right? If you play that on a big tenor, the color of forte arrives at a volume much later than is practical for the orchestration or your personal effort. So on the concert, what the community at the concert would hear is effort as you try to just stay on equipment that you're comfortable with. Long term, and I've actually experienced this, you would get to a place of injury. And that is to say that effort doesn't have consequences. The effort that you are putting into this challenging upper register sort of delicate playing is going to have consequences where you could end up injuring yourself playing equipment that wasn't made to do that specifically. So when I play Tommy Dorsey or Bolero, I want a small bore trombone because that's what the composer had in mind. If I'm going to play a Heldenleben, it's going to be a large, 547 bore. And if I'm going to play Schumann 3, I'm going to play alto. I'm going to Brahms 1. I'm going to play alto, and it's not because I'm being an academic stickler. It's because I'm trying to manage the color of my sound, my contribution to the concert, to be appropriate to the orchestration and the composer. And it has to do with when you reach the color of forte, right? And so if you play alto, of course, upper register is easier, but that's not the point. So what's challenging, if it's insofar as monogamy to your equipment, is you end up either because if you want comfort or you just decide that you don't care, you end up producing the wrong sound. You end up being like kind of a moo cow in the back row if you're playing equipment that's too big. Or you could do it the other way around where you reach, like if I play like a small bore trombone, like a King Toby, if I'm going to do that on Zarathustra, it will sound like a child swearing for the first time.
Yeah. Well, and this is something that, my boss may not like me saying these things, but well, how's that going to help Estelle Edwards? But in all seriousness, this is where we're at. I think people need to understand, once you achieve these jobs, you have to respect the music.
And the punchline is, where is your priorities? If you're putting your equipment over the music, can you really say that you're an artist anymore and not just a craftsman?
And I really appreciate you talking about that, because it's one of those things that people are like, well, he plays, well, of course he does, because this is the music that it's, and so I think people need to understand that. But if you're auditioning,
that's tricky.
You have to be consistent. I have seen people that will manage different cup depths for different tenor pieces, not bass, but you want more consistency and a little bit more security. When I'm building an audition instrument, it's a different subject than when I'm building an instrument for the band. So, okay, I have a few thoughts on this, and they're really strong feelings, but like this is for me, okay, and it may not be for you all. When you're talking about it is okay. So, but why? But why? Because like at the end of the day, you want them to hire your voice. Yes.
Right. That's so then you know that no matter what job you get, that you roll out of bed, you just be the honest version of yourself, instead of like trying to pretend to be somebody else. Right. If you take an audition and you're assuming that the committee wants Toby off and you copy me in every way, shape, or form, what happens if you win? What kind of hell would that be? That like for the next 2 or 3 decades, you roll out of bed and you think, all right, got to pretend to be Toby again today. That's an awful existence.
Yeah.
You want the orchestra to hire your voice, and that, on the one hand, you could think that that's a get out of jail free card if you lose, but no, that's actually, you have to take time to cultivate what your voice is and make sure that if you don't get hired, you can say, well, good. If I didn't get hired, that means they didn't want my voice, and that's a good thing. It's like not getting married to somebody that really wanted to marry somebody else anyway. You did yourselves a favor, both of you. But all right, I digress, okay? Think about trumpet players. They take 3 or 4 trumpets to an audition. They're going to take a piccolo, they're going to take a C, they're going to take a B flat. They might even take a D trumpet for solo repertoire. So this is impractical for trombones to do. I always took my tenor and my alto. This isn't what most people do, but I always took my tenor and my alto. If I were to audition for an orchestra now, I might even take 3 trombones. This is completely impractical, but I would try to find a way. The reason I say that is because some Stravinsky, especially Bolero L'Enfant, I would at least try it on a different mouthpiece to respect the fact that Bolero and Mahler 3 are not going to be the same sound, okay? So when you get to your job, then you can absolutely bring the right equipment. But just a caveat is, and this is one of the biggest reasons that people wouldn't do that, is because each one of these horns is going to have different proclivities for timbre and slide position. Yeah, intonation is one of the biggest things, and you need to actually, in addition to learning your aural shape, like the position of your tongue is going to be different for each one of these instruments, and you just have to learn it. And as well, you have to learn the kinesthetic memory that your slide arm will go to the right position and not sound out of tune. You'll blow down the center of the pitch, not up or down. This doesn't happen by accident, and the ability to go between 1 or 2 different mouthpieces and or trombones is, this is really important. You have to actually practice the ability to go between these 2 instruments without it being a big deal. And so, like, look, I'm saying you should do this, but beware, if you don't give it the practice credit that's due, you will screw it up, and you may as well have not done it. It may have not been worth the effort.
It may separate you, and it may separate you.
That's a much more succinct way to put it. It may separate you, and it may separate you.
So, I mean, if you're going to do something, make it yours, make it you, and be unique.
You have to be accountable to the music and the time, tune, tone.
Yes.
And
so I know you work with a lot. You're teaching at BU,
Boston University, New England Conservatory,
and so you're seeing best. And at Tanglewood,
you
work with the fellows.
Those are the best of the best.
Yeah, and you get to work with them. How do you make a young person their own artist?
Okay, that's a great question. How do you make a young person their own artist? The way you would do that is who you're listening to, all right? Usually we are all an aggregate of who we're listening to the most. You think about, you want to know your future, who are your 5 best friends? Who do you spend the most time with? If I know who your 5 best friends are, I can immediately tell your future. But think about how you consume media, especially the media that you hope to reproduce, right? So who are your 5 best friends there, right? Like, Irby Green, Joe Alessi, Ian Bousfield, Elaine Trudel. I love listening to all these great soloists. Christian Lindbergh, absolutely, right? And I could never say that I'm like trying to be Scott Hartman, but his sound has a definite influence, especially on my articulation. And so I treat Scott or Christian Lindbergh or Joe Alessi like they're my friends. I don't call them up that often, but I listen to them constantly. And when I say listen, I'm like watching them on YouTube, I'm looking at their embouchure. And when I play, I like to think that I'm an aggregate of these 7 or 8 players, right? So in this process, I'm choosing to own my sound, right? And when I talk to a young person, I say, like, who are you listening to? What do you listen to the most? And I get kind of a shoulder shrug. You know why? Because, you know what? When I was 19, 20, I wanted it to be about my time in the practice room, cultivating my sound with long tones and arbans. And not to say that that's a waste of time, but it's like jumping in a Ferrari with no location in mind, no map. You're just like pedal to the metal down the road. Who knows if you're going to end up in the ocean? You are rudderless. And so what you have to do, first of all, is to get a clear perception of what you want to sound like. A young person just typically needs to identify what they want to sound like and allow their creative mind to be more like a sponge instead of a pitcher with no water, a pitcher of water. Yeah.
I I listen all the time. I listen here at Edwards all the time. I listen on the road all the time. At trade shows, I listen in my house. I have a listening room. I'm
You have a great listening
absorbing.
room.
Yeah, I absorb sound all the time, and so that I have good ideas of what the player is feeling, compression, even when tension enters their body, because I've listened so much, I can tell where that's coming from or how to free it up for them. But you know what is a good sound for them. If your sound isn't unique or yours, it's just going to be a trombone.
Well, and in my experience, that what happens when you have equipment that is made to produce a different sound than is the sound in your mind, is when you get the most effort
Correct.
in your sound. You start to like get close to injury because you've got equipment that was made to produce a sound that isn't yours.
Yeah.
It's like subconsciously you know that, and what we end up hearing, all people who love you and want you to succeed, we hear a struggle, a battle somewhere inside you with the trombone as you're trying to make it do something it wasn't made to do.
And then the tension, and this is gonna be like a few parts. This is gonna be our part one, because this is a long subject. So I'm gonna thank you for being here this is gonna be part one. This is going fast.
That's
so
good.
I think we've got some more things we can talk about.
It's a good time.
But thanks.
All right,
part
to be
one.
continued.
Yeah, man. Hi.
That was. I had one job and I wasn't gonna it up.
Oh, it wasn't recording.
Don't be saying that.